Chapter 11. Focus. What can I learn from what I'm like when I'm most focused? How can I increase my ability to concentrate? How do I limit my distractions and calm my busy mind? What's the difference between someone performing at superhero levels and someone failing to ever discover their superpowers? In many cases, it's a matter of focus. I'm sure you've had numerous times in your life when you've really locked in on a task. Maybe it was writing a report that mattered a great deal to you. Maybe it was having a session with a mentor you love. Maybe it was attacking a bowl of your favorite ice cream. How did you do with these tasks? In all likelihood, you crushed them, writing one of the best reports of your life, learning huge amounts from your mentor, and devouring that ice cream like it was the last dessert in the world. This happened because you were able to train your focus on the task at hand. Get right on that task and not let anything distract you from that task. So why do most of us have only so much ability to maintain focus? Simply, I think it's because we were never taught to do so. Certainly, I don't recall having a focus class when I was in elementary school. Do you remember when you were a kid and you went outside on a sunny day with a magnifying glass? How cool was it to hover the glass over a leaf, see an intensely bright spot appear on the leaf, and watch as the leaf started to smoke and burn? What you were able to do was focus a greater level of the sun's intensity on that leaf. And where that bright spot appeared, things were their hottest. Interestingly, when we talk about someone being intelligent, we often call them bright. Going back to our magnifying glass analogy, maybe what we're really saying isn't that this person is much more intelligent than most other people. Maybe that person is just more focused. Focus allows us to train our brain power on a particular task to burn through that task. It's amazing what we can accomplish when we're focused. Conversely, when we're less focused, we're less likely to accomplish what we truly want to do because we're not as committed, both emotionally and physically, to doing it. The primary enemy to focus is distraction. Quick start. Rate your current level of concentration from 0 to 10. Now rate your desire to increase this level. Your concentration is like a muscle. You can train it to become stronger with practice. Practicing concentration. Concentration is at the crux of all human success and endeavor. Hindu priest, entrepreneur, and former monk Dandapani told me during one of my podcasts. If you can't concentrate, you can't manifest. What Dandapani is saying is that concentration is a critical component of anything you want to accomplish. But, like so many other things we've discussed already, we've never really been taught how to concentrate. Sure, our parents and our teachers might have implored us to concentrate harder, maybe even criticizing our lack of focus with a question such as, "Why can't you just concentrate?" But the simple answer to that is that most of us never learned how. Dandapani points out that concentration is like a muscle that gets stronger the more you exercise it. Concentration is something you can learn and something you can practice to get better at, he said. However, what most of us practice instead is distraction. We allow our minds to jump from thought to thought, often using technology to help us practice distraction until we're experts at it. And we should be, because we often get a dozen or more hours of practice a day. Just imagine what it would be like if we practiced concentration for even a fraction of that time. Dandapani has a remarkably clear way of looking at this. I define concentration as my ability to keep my awareness on one thing for an extended period of time. Every time my concentration drifts, I use my willpower to bring my awareness back. Most of us think of lack of concentration as a function of our mind bouncing from place to place. Dandapani has a different and more helpful metaphor. To him, it isn't your mind that's moving, it's your awareness. He sees awareness as a glowing ball of light that moves to different parts of your mind. In order to excel at concentration, you need to make yourself keep that ball of light trained on one spot in your mind for an extended period. This won't be easy at first, but a conscious effort to exercise your willpower in this way is likely to lead to impressive results. You can work on this during nearly any pursuit. If you're having a conversation with someone, make a concerted effort to pay attention to nothing other than the conversation. If you notice your awareness drifting away from the conversation, refocus your glowing ball of light. If you're reading a report for work, train your eyes on the words as though nothing else exists. Again, if you notice the light of your awareness beginning to shine on something else, bring that ball back to the report. If you make the commitment to practice concentration an hour or so a day, it will soon become second nature. Whenever possible, try to do one thing at a time. We've talked a bit about multitasking already, but for now, just remember that multitasking is a grossly inefficient way to get anything done. If at all feasible, allow yourself to do whatever you're doing to the exclusion of everything else. If you're on the phone, don't scroll through social media at the same time. If you're making breakfast, don't also work on your to-do list for the day. By doing one thing at a time, your concentration muscle will become incredibly strong, and your focus will reach limitless levels. Another key to boosting your concentration is decluttering your environment. A Princeton University study found that multiple stimuli present in the visual field at the same time compete for neural representation by mutually suppressing their evoked activity throughout the visual cortex, providing a neural correlate for the limited processing capacity of the visual system. In layperson's terms, what this means is that the physical clutter in your surroundings compete for your attention, which results in decreased performance and increased anxiety and stress levels. So, if you want to become a master at concentration, divest yourself of the potential for distraction whenever concentration is critical. If you're working on your computer, shut down every application and every open tab other than the ones you absolutely need to perform the task at hand. Limit the number of items in your physical workspace as well. While I think many of us consider a desk piled with books, magazines, papers, pictures of our kids, and souvenirs from our vacations to be cozy and even the sign of an active mind, every single one of these items creates a pull away from your concentration. Family heirlooms are wonderful, and you already know how I feel about books. Just limit the number of things that share residence with the place where you need to be the most productive. Calming your busy mind. Unlimiting your focus requires more than just getting to the tasks at hand. And we've already discussed focus requires an ability to set aside distractions and give your attention to what you're doing. But is that even possible anymore? Most of us are working on multiple devices at the same time, often with multiple applications running on each of those devices. We have meetings to attend, emails and texts to answer, social media statuses to update, and multiple projects in play. Yet precisely because of this, it's more important than ever to find ways to bring calm to your mind. You might not even realize it, but all the input you're getting on any given day is causing you a considerable amount of stress. If you're like many people, you might even think of this as a positive thing because it means that you're busy, and being busy, you're making a meaningful contribution to the world. While this might be true, it is in spite of this anxiety rather than because of it. Anxious thoughts can overwhelm you, making it difficult to make decisions and take action to deal with whatever issue bothers you, writes psychologist Melanie Greenberg, PhD, author of The Stress-Proof Brain. Anxiety can also lead to overthinking, which makes you more anxious, which leads to more overthinking, and so on. How can you get out of this vicious cycle? Repressing anxious thoughts won't work. They will just pop up again, sometimes with more intensity. Juliet Funt is the CEO of the consulting firm Whitespace at work. She describes Whitespace as the thinking time, the strategic pause that's in between the busyness. When she was on my podcast, Juliet called Whitespace the oxygen that allows everything else to catch fire. What both Greenberg and Funt are identifying is the need for all of us to have more time when our minds aren't cluttered. It's obvious how doing this will positively impact our mental health, but what's less obvious is how it will also dramatically improve our focus and our productivity. Some interesting studies in neuroscience underscore this, showing us how distraction is actually changing our brains. One from University College London compared the brains of heavy media multitaskers with those of light media multitaskers and found that the anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, which is involved in focus, was smaller among the former group. Conversely, a study at the Max Planck Institute found that among people going through training exercises to increase attention, their ACCs grew thicker. And distractions can be a serious time sink. A study from University of California, Irvine, shows how distractions can really disrupt your day. You have to completely shift your thinking. It takes you a while to get into it, and it takes you a while to get back and remember where you were, said Gloria Mark, lead author of the study. We found about 82% of all interrupted work is resumed on the same day. But here's the bad news. It takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back to the task. That's more than 20 minutes every time you're distracted. And how often are you distracted every day? Tools like meditation, yoga, and certain martial arts can be tremendously valuable in helping you calm your busy mind. But if you're in the middle of the day and can't afford to get away for more than a few minutes, there are still some things you can do. 3 important ones are: number 1, breathe. We've already talked about the value of taking deep, cleansing breaths as part of your morning routine. But doing the same thing is valuable whenever you need to recenter yourself. Holistic health expert Andrew Weil, MD, developed a breathing tool that he calls the 4-7-8 method. It works like this. Exhale completely through your mouth, making a whoosh sound. Close your mouth and inhale quietly through your nose to a mental count of 4. Now hold your breath for a count of 7. Then exhale completely through your mouth, making a whoosh sound to a count of 8. This is one breath. Now inhale again and repeat the cycle 3 more times for a total of 4 breaths. Number 2, do something that has been causing you stress. This goes back to what we talked about earlier regarding procrastination. As we now all know, thanks to Bluma Zygarnik, things weighing on our minds are going to continue weighing on our minds until we deal with them. If you're having trouble focusing, or if your mind is operating on a dozen planes at the same time, it's very possible the reason this is happening is because there's something that you need to do that you've been avoiding doing. If that's the case, do a little 4-7-8 breathing, deal with the stressful task, and then you can get back to everything else you want to do with increased focus. Quick start. What is one important thing that you're avoiding that is affecting your focus? Number 3, schedule time for distractions. It might be a challenge for you to turn off your phone and your email when you need to focus, but if you can convince yourself to do these things, great. They're relatively easy to do. What's likely to be considerably harder is to avoid letting worries and obligations get in the way of whatever you're trying to accomplish in that moment. There's a reason you're seeing these things as worries or obligations, and that makes them much harder to push out of your mind. Addressing one of your concerns head on, as we just discussed, is one way to deal with this. But there are going to be situations where that's simply not possible. Instead, what if you set aside a specific time in your schedule to move these worries and obligations to the forefront of your mind? Simply saying, "I'll worry about that later," isn't likely to keep that worry from creeping back 20 minutes from now. But saying, "I'll worry about that at 4:15," very well might. Quick start. Schedule your next distraction time. Before we move on, unlimiting your focus is a key to unleashing your superpowers. When your mind is truly focused, when you're completely throwing yourself at a task, you achieve at levels that are impossible when you're distracted or divided in your thoughts. Before we move on from this chapter, let's try a few things. Take a good look at your to-do list and identify the thing or things on it that is likely to invade your thoughts until you get it done. Formulate a plan for dealing with that task using some of the anti-procrastination tools you now have. Do something right now that changes your productivity environment so you can do a better job of staying on task. And finally, practice a technique for calming your busy mind. Does it work for you? If so, commit to using it regularly.
So focus is the first of 5 methodologies. And I just want to ask you, why is focus up front? Why is this number 1?
That is a wonderful question. I'm glad you actually noticed that. Is the reason we cover focus first is because if you don't have that, you can't do any of the other methods. So the future methods we're talking about are things like study, but you can't study if you don't have focus. Things like memory, it's not your retention, it's your attention and your focus that's important. Things like speed reading. If your mind's going everywhere and you're easily distracted, your mind's wandering, you're not going to be able to read better and smarter, and also thinking. How are you going to be able to think and solve problems and be creative and make good decisions if you can't concentrate? So focus is what we start with. But I'm glad you pointed that out. That's how important focus is.
So focus is our foundation for all the methods going forward. And wow, I mean, like focus is something we really are lacking in. It's something, I mean, I think about like listening to that chapter, I realized how unfocused I am, how my default is to be distracted. And especially what came up for me that chapter, once let's say we clear our spaces and we create the best optimum conditions, there is a reality where we are now available to people in a way we weren't before. The amount of emails, text messages, MSN messages, Telegraph, all the different stuff constantly coming at us and bombarding us from people we like, people we love. It feels so urgent. I find it really challenging to create space from that. I feel like that's one of the biggest distractions we have because it does feel so urgent to respond to people. What perspectives or advice do you have around creating healthy parameters in relationship with that?
It's similar to the conversation that you and I had about the people we spend time with. It's driven by technology, but people could also give you energy or take energy away. They could also help you to focus, or they could be distracting also as well. But you're right, the way we opened up the book and we talked about technology and how it's driving all this amazing innovation and change and progress. And there's this thing called digital distraction, app notifications, social media alerts. And again, I love technology because it allows us to connect and learn and empower and support each other. And I want to know what all my friends are doing, of course. But absolutely, it could get out of hand when we don't put some kind of consciousness into it, bringing mindfulness into the technology. When it comes to our focus, we know that it's very difficult to, if not impossible, to multitask. And the goal is to really do one thing. And everything seems important. A lot of times, and I know most people who are listening to this, they bought the book also as well, because there's things in the book that we're not going through on the audio, and there are things in the audio that obviously are not in the book. But if you are the kind of person who reads a book and you highlight everything, right? You know, the people who just like highlight everything so the book like glows in the dark. And if everything is important, then nothing becomes important. And the same thing with our focus. If you are easily distracted, right? When you think about distraction, the opposite of distraction, it's distraction. You're losing traction in something. And that presupposes you have traction going towards something else. And so a lot of times when people are checking their phones, they're not really distracted because it's not taking them away from something else. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to go on your phone and be distracted if that's what you want to do, if it's not pulling you from something that's important in that moment, right? So you could use that time, and as we gave suggestions, schedule your distraction time. But what that presupposes, if you're distracted, is that you have a goal or you have something you should be working on. And a lot of people are watching and binge watching videos, and it's not a distraction because it's not taking them away from something that they have an intention to do. Now you set that intention, now it becomes a distraction. If it's taking away from that business plan or your videos that you need to make, or preparing for that presentation at work or studying for school, then it is a real distraction. And so how do you do it? Again, the power of questions goes a long way. Ask yourself, what is the best use of this moment right now? That's a question to help with your reticular activating system to focus on. Right now, there's probably a 1 billion, 2 billion stimuli you and I could be focusing on right now in the moment. Primarily, our brain is a deletion device. It's trying to keep all that information out. What comes in are the things that are important to us. But here's the thing, not everything has equal importance, as you mentioned. And so you have to be intelligent and stand guard to your mind as you would for negative things, is what's urgent and what's important. And if it's not, what I suggest is don't resist it. Don't try not to think about going out Friday night. Don't try not to think. That's like trying not to think of a big purple giraffe. You know, if I said, Mia, do not think of a big purple giraffe in this studio, a big purple giraffe, do not think about it.
I'm in trouble.
Exactly. So the mind can't process negatives. And the more you resist it, the more it persists. So what you resist persists. So don't try not to think about the party Saturday night or picking up the dry cleaning. What I would suggest is just write it down so that you have it captured somewhere. You've acknowledged that it's there and it's important. Your mind could go to rest and not have to have the Zeigarnik effect, kind of obsess about it, and you could focus on the thing at hand. Now, another really important question is this, or principle, I would say. When it comes to your focus and it comes to your productivity, the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. I'm going to say that again because this is like I hope it lands for everyone listening. The most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. And that really is the essence of focus. The people who are extraordinary, they are outstanding. They are limitless, if you will. They're getting really good at the things that matter. They're not majoring in minor things. And that's why when it comes to your focus, we know things like the 80-20 rule, right? Pareto's principle. Pareto's principle is saying 20% of your efforts give you 80% of the rewards. And so focus on those 20% that gives you most of the rewards instead of focusing on the 80% of things in life that are only giving you 20% back. It's the equivalent of when I was talking about the power plant story, that you turn one screw and all of a sudden the entire power plant turns on. What are those little things that will make the biggest difference in your life? And so focus on that. Dr. Stephen Covey, who wrote a great book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, said, you have to put first things first. First things first. And that helps you to laser focus.
And could the most important thing change moment to moment, for instance? Like, I'm just thinking for people who balance family, relationships, and work, for instance, where maybe the most important thing ultimately is family, but maybe for the next 2 hours, the most important thing is the task, and they'll call their family back in 2 hours. Like, is that important?
It is absolutely important because we're not. Here's the thing with words again, is that my goal for me is not. This is my personal approach for life management, if you will, is not balance, because words have a feeling to it. We all use the word balance, and most people do. For me, when I think of balance, I'm like on a balance beam. I'm trying to keep everything evenly weighted, because that's what balance means, even weights. And so for me, I don't look for life, work, health balance. I look for harmony. That's my word. Meaning that I don't need to spend the equal amount of focus and time to my health as I do to the kids, as I do to my career, as I do spend the same amount of time in the gym. That's not how I'm looking to balance. How I'm looking to do it is like a symphony. You have an orchestra, and not every single person or instrument is playing the equal amount of time, but they all come in at the right moment, and they create this incredible art.
I love that analogy.
That's the goal with our work.
That's an empowering analogy. I think I always imagine balance as almost like a trade-off too. Like you're trying to juggle all these things and make them equal, but that's so much more intelligent and effective. All right, so with focus as our foundational sort of a methodology, let's find out about the next few.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the power of study.